Hey guys, as you can see by the title, this interview was with Eric Trump. I just finished it. It was a good one. Right before the interview did start, he did ask me to not touch on any social issues, so I couldn't ask about abortion or marriage or any of those things, which kind of sucked because I had a whole bunch of questions for him on those topics. What actually happened was last year I interviewed him, and as some of you guys know, I lost that whole interview. So I was hoping to ask those questions again and get it on recorded, but he told me personally that he just didn't want to share those views, and I think it's just for political reasons that he didn't want to tell people what he believes on those issues. So that was kind of disappointing. But I did get to ask him a lot of other questions and try to stay away from more of the questions that he gets asked every day in the media with just the same answer, but more try to get behind the curtain a little bit and see what he's like just as a regular dude, having a dad that just happened to become the president. So yeah, it was a fun interview. I'm happy, thankful I got to do it. I hope you guys enjoy it. And yeah, thanks. So I guess I'd love to start off with. We'll just jump right into it here. So I'd love to start off with. So you hold conservative values, you hold working hard, all those things, and so I guess was that instilled in you from the very beginning? Like, what was it like growing up in your household way before your dad was known as a politician? Like just as he was just a businessman in New York. What was it like?
Well, Kyle, I think everybody in the world knows my father and kind of knows the hard driver that he is. And that's kind of how he raised us. He expected us to work. He expected us to get good grades. I think I've told you this before, but every day when I went to school, he used to always say, right, kids, 3 rules: no drinking, no drugs, no smoking. Then he would add a fourth in: you better get good grades. And listen, he expected us to be good kids. He expected us to have manners. My mom came from communist Czechoslovakia. She's a tough, awesome, elegant woman. And, she didn't put up with kids who didn't say please, didn't say thank you, didn't open up doors. So she really kind of, grounded manners into us. My father grounded work ethic into us. When we were 11, we started working on our construction sites. It's funny. I just bought a house, and half the work in the house I did myself, right? I could do electrical, I could do plumbing, I can do, sheetrock work, I can do framing work. It's just, we were put on construction jobs at a very young age, making minimum wage. And guess what? If I wanted a new fishing rod, if I wanted a bike, congratulations, you're going to go work for it. And it did a bunch of things. Certainly conservative value, Kyle's, but it did a bunch of things. A, it taught you the, value of a dollar. B, at the end of a long day, work on a construction site, busting your, what, you weren't exactly going to go take that money and go spend it on, booze or drugs or, something insignificant, right? So it made you respect money. It tired you out. At the end of the day, you want to go to bed. You didn't want to go partying. And so it kind of kept me, and I can't tell you, listen, the circle that we traveled in, right? New York, good schools, et cetera. There's a lot of money that flowed through those places. I can't tell you how many of my good friends back in the day went to rehab and, in some cases much worse. And we never went down that path. We were always very straight edge kids. We worked very hard. And, to this day, you won't find harder workers than us in just about every regard.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are just Judeo-Christian values. Would you say you grew up in a Christian home? Would your grandpa instill that in your father? Like, where did these values? What was the basis of these values?
Yeah, well, obviously very Christian. In fact, literally right before this podcast, I'm away from my child tonight. I'm in New York. They're down in Florida, and I said a little prayer. We say 3 prayers every night. In fact, we say 3 prayers, and then we say the Pledge of Allegiance here in the U.S. But it's really cute. And I started that with my son. So every single night before he goes to bed, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep, right? We do, 3 different prayers. We do the Lord's Prayer. And so there's no question. There are the same prayers that were said to me, every night, or that I said every single night when I was a kid. And, I'm certainly going to pass that on to my daughter, who's just kind of getting to that age. She's 2 now, and she's just getting to that age. But that's a kind of moment of bonding for us every single night. I don't care where I am. I don't care who I'm with. Short of literally being 100% inaccessible because I'm on an airplane in the middle of the Atlantic or something along those lines. Every single night at 7:45, I'm either with my, kids saying prayers, or if I'm away, I'm on FaceTime with them saying prayers. So it's something that we really do hold near and dear. So yeah, religion played a big part of our life. I think it still does. It's amazing how religion works. I saw it in a really interesting way through politics in this country, where every place I went, people would come up to me, put their hand on my shoulder, say a prayer. We're praying for you. Our family's praying for you. Our community's praying for you. And it's incredibly powerful. And believe me, we've gone through a lot in the last 5 years politically, and the amount of times people shoot arrows at us. And
yeah,
I don't think we could have made it through that process if there wasn't somebody looking down and guiding the process and guiding what we did and how we did it and where we did it and how we said it and everything else that went along with it. So now I'm very religious, and I believe in religion, and I just believe it's a huge facet of society, and I think the whole world needs a lot more religion in it right now. I think we'd be a better place if it had more of it.
Yeah. And so would you say that you call yourself a Christian, and that did you believe in Lord Jesus Christ at a certain point in your life? Or would you say you always have been, or like what was there a defining moment? Or
yeah, listen, I always have been. I think religion goes in cycles, and I think there were times in my life where I was probably more religious than less, and I'm probably the most now. And I think everybody can kind of express a religion in different ways, and that's what's kind of interesting and unique about religion. Yet kind of get to the same place. For me, so oftentimes I'll be sitting in a tree stand, and that's my connection with God, with nature. And I don't necessarily think religion always has to be as formal as going to mass several times a week. Like, I think maybe people can manifest religion in different ways for themselves. So I'm very religious. I say prayer every single night. Again, as I mentioned, I pray with my children. I'm certainly Christian, and again, I kind of hold firm to the fact that we need a lot more family in our lives. We need a lot more religion in our lives. And I think if you look at the vast majority of problems that kind of our cultures face around the world, it's actually when you have a breakdown of religion, when you have a breakdown of values, when you have a breakdown of family. You start breaking down those kind of core values, and I think you start stacking the deck against success very, very quickly. And I think they're pretty easy examples to give of communities that have gone astray, places that have gone astray. So oftentimes, that was a cognizant effort to rid religion from those societies, rid that kind of family bond, that family spirit. And it's never worked out well.
Yeah. So in the politics that you see nowadays, on the left and the right, there's a visceral hatred, it seems, for each other. There's just a lot of name calling. It's like the Wild West almost of in just words. And then of course we both know that Scripture talks about loving your enemies, praying for those that persecute you. How do you take being in politics and being in that world and having to engage and defend yourself, but on the flip side still doing it with loving your neighbor and dealing with the enemies in a Christian way?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. I think it's kind of the dichotomy of the two. As a family, believe me, the last thing, Kyle, we needed in the world was to get into politics. We needed politics like a hole in the head. We live great lives, get to enjoy ourselves. We have some of the best properties in the world. We're really good at what we do, meaning the real estate world. And then one day we all sat there and said, my father goes, listen, kids, I want to hop into this. Let's do this. We didn't know a damn thing about politics. We didn't know about yes, Republicans, Democrats, et cetera, but we didn't know the system. We didn't know the players in the system. We didn't know the evilness of the system. And by the way, it's not just the United States, it's around the world. And politics is a nasty, nasty game. So I think you're right. You go into it for all the right reasons. Listen, we're fortunate. We can make decisions. My father was in a great spot to lead an economy. He led the greatest economy this country has ever seen, lowest unemployment, lowest African-American unemployment, female unemployment, youth unemployment, Hispanic unemployment. I mean, set every single economic record that you could ever set. And guess what? You know why you're doing that? You know why you give up a billionaire lifestyle to do that? Not because you want to get attacked by CNN every single day, and not ever because you want to take, bullets and arrows in the back every single day, and give up your whole lifestyle and give up your freedom and have, another side trying to impeach you multiple times for nothing, right? You do that because you want to make a real difference in the world. Believe me, life is a lot better outside, the political sphere. So you go into it with that intent. And that's what you try and do. At the same time, it's unfortunately a vicious game. It's not just here, it's in Canada, it's all over the world. It's just a vicious game. And, it's really interesting. I've always operated in kind of the business world, right? Where you could have two people. You could have somebody on the far right and you could have somebody on the far left. And in business, they'll get along. You know why? They want to make the new best widget. They want to innovate. They want to make a great product. They want to sell it. And at the end of the day, with capitalism, I think money ultimately, for the most part, there's other things, but, money for the most part and success speaks. You want to build that great Apple. You want to become the next, General Motors, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
In politics, if everybody's locked in, by the way, there's plenty of people who have made money in politics, don't get me wrong, but if everybody's locked into the same wage, to the same this, right? I mean, what differentiates, somebody on the right and somebody on the left? And if you really answer that question, it's power. Politics at the end of the day is kind of a power grab. So the only way you differentiate yourself from the other person sitting to your right or left, in a parliament or in a Congress or wherever it might be around the world, is that political power, being able to control people, being able to manipulate system, being able to enact things that you believe in. And that causes people to get awfully askew very, very quickly, right? I mean, that takes the two people that would have worked great together in capitalism, and it almost pits them against one another. And I saw that kind of firsthand, and it's sad it's the way the system works, because if you're actually able to kind of channel that energy, certain places, the United States you'd be unstoppable. You'd be unstoppable. And, the sad thing for kind of, the Western world, you look at the adversaries that we both share, you being Canadian, me being, guy from the US, there's a lot of countries around the world that don't have our best interest at heart. China is one of them. You have to be honest about it. Anybody who's not honest about it is, they're stealing intellectual property every single day. They're manipulating currencies. They want to become the world language. I mean, they have a business plan to, effectively be the superpower in, effectively 2035. They don't have our best interests at heart yet. So oftentimes the societies in Canada and the US and so many other places in kind of the Western world, you're sitting there tearing each other apart for no reason while, these people are licking their lips.
So do you think you think unity is possible? Do you think there going to be a cooling down of the temperature, like it was in the Ronald Reagan days, for example, or do you think this is just we're going to keep going down this road and there's not much we can do about it?
No, listen, I'd certainly hope there would be. There is no reason, a couple of years ago that frankly we shouldn't, and everybody shouldn't have been cool. At the same time, every time my father, sneezed, they try and impeach him for no reason whatsoever. I mean, he spent 4 years of his presidency fighting impeachments, at the same time having the best economy this country's ever seen, rebuilding our military, focusing on education, all the things that matter, to society. I mean, what really matters to society, and that's happiness, at the end of the day. And how do you have a happy society? Well, you have a strong economy. You have people that can live the American dream. You have protection, meaning no one messes with you. No one can kind of take what you are as a country away from you. You have true patriotism. You have upward mobility. We have all those things in the United States, and probably more so than any country around the world. And, I think we have a lot to celebrate. Again, but there's a lot of adverse interests that are out there sowing dissension because, frankly, it works for whatever cause they're part of. And you see that all over the world. And
when you're in the room with a political foe and the cameras are off and there's no recording devices, which is, I guess people are always trying to get little sound bites here and there, but is the temperature cooler there? Like, is there more of like, hey, I know I said this online. I don't really mean it, but I have to do it for my side, or?
Yeah. I mean, First of all, lucky enough, I run hotels, I build golf courses and commercial buildings and, real estate projects. So I spend much more side, obviously on private enterprise. I run our company and the Trump Organization, everything else. But yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, you'd see, in the U.S., you have obviously the Republican, party, the RNC, you have the DNC, the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And you'd see people, members of the DNC, you'd be on, Fox News, and they'd come up to you, they'd shake your hand and, hey, how are you doing? I saw you do this the other day. The picture of your kid was incredibly cute. And, about 2 seconds later, you see them go on TV and they were just absolute animals. It's like, I don't recognize the person I was speaking to who was literally just, whispering.
Is that surprising to you, or is it that's part of the game? That's normal.
Okay, it's incredibly surprising to me, especially as a guy who's not a politician, right? You got to realize we're not politicians. We didn't come out of this world, right? This is, now we understand it probably better than anybody, but like, this isn't who we are. Again, I'm a bricks and mortar guy. I grew up building skyscrapers and big projects and, running businesses. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Not that you don't have sharks in that world. You have a lot of sharks in, New York real estate and, kind of big business around the world. It's uber competitive, but you don't see it as the same ways you see it in politics. It's, again, back to that power grab. That power grab is truly what kind of separates the politicians from normal people who just believe in ordinary capitalism.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to change gears here a bit. So as I got ready for this podcast, I texted a bunch of my buddies and said, hey, if you had a question for Eric, what would you ask him? And I have a friend, Peter Hedstrom in Minneapolis. So he's an American, and he wanted to know, what's the most dad thing you could remember growing up with your father? Did he teach you how to drive? Do you remember camping with him? Like what were some of those things that's kind of behind the curtain? Because I mean, a lot of the talking points you get asked every day on the different organizations you get asked to speak on, but take us behind the curtain a little bit more of what it was like growing up in your house, and what are some of the memories you have?
I have a lot, and it's actually, this is a great format to actually talk about them on, because most of the time you've got a 2-minute clip and you can't really elaborate. But Donald Trump is obviously a very different type of father. He's a guy who, worked tremendously hard. At the same time, he never, I told you the story about Luke before, Luke and Carolina, my kids, no matter where I am in the world, no matter who I'm with, I don't care who I'm with, I will step aside and say our little prayers before they go to bed. All right. It's just, that's religion to me. And it's, both kind of metaphorically and just, no matter where we were, if we called his office, it didn't matter who he had in his office. It could be the mayor of New York. It could be, didn't matter. We were put through on his line, and I remember one time specifically, Rudy Giuliani, right? America's mayor, him probably, I'm sure, very well. And I called up the office, and, he was in my father's office, and Eric, say hi to, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, how are you? Mr. Giuliani.
Yeah.
How are you doing? It didn't matter who he was with. He always had time to take his kids' calls, and he would never miss them. So that's really one thing that I really, admire. It was less of kind of a relationship of playing catch. It was more a relationship, every time we could, we'd walk, one of the real estate projects, we would walk a building. So you'd have Trump Tower that was being built, right? And you've got 70 stories of steel going up, and we'd be walking some random floor, and, he'd be talking to the foreman, and I can't tell you how many lessons I learned from doing that. I was a young little kid. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. These buildings were bigger than life. You're watching steel fly through the air and concrete and everything else. But I remember one time we go up and there was a piece of asbestos, of all things, that they were moving from a project, right? And, it was a renovation of a project. And my father goes, asbestos, how is that? And I'll never forget the foreman. It's horrible for you. It's horrible for, obviously, right? It causes all sorts of problems, which is why we don't have a society. But I'll never forget, and I remember this as a kid, sir, it's the best fireproofing, in the world. There's just nothing that even remotely compares. And he pulls out an acetylene torch that was there, and he puts it on this piece of asbestos. And the guy's holding a torch there that's a couple thousand degrees on this piece of asbestos, is hardly turning a color, right? I mean, it was unbelievable. And then, at the same time, they had some of the, fireproofing that they spray on metal beams, and they put the torch on there, and 30 seconds later, it's bubbling up. And obviously, you can't use asbestos for all the reasons we know, but it was just little lessons like that, kind of I'll never forget. Walking the construction sites, being on bulldozers, and it was really amazing. He always took us with him. We were always allowed to play in his office. No matter how serious the meeting was, we'd play with Legos on his office floor. A great father, and again, high expectations. You better work.
Yeah.
And you're going to work for your keep, and you're going to get good grades in school, and you're going to behave. And, at the same time, he wasn't so handsy that you didn't have your own individual freedom. And I always respected that about him.
Fair enough. So we just had Thanksgivings, or you guys did. I always tell my American buddies we were thankful a month ago. Yeah. But you guys sat around the table. I'm sure you guys had a nice dinner together. But there's no cameras around. There's none of that. So what gets talked about when you're around the table with your family today? I'm assuming you just had a dinner there. So
yeah. Well, I mean, it ranges. Obviously, we talk about work, we talk about life, we talk about kids, we talk about obviously politics. Politics always comes into it, right? In some way, shape, or form. It's a lot of our lives today, but everything. I mean, we're a funny family, and I think people saw that throughout The Apprentice. I think people saw that probably watching us out on the campaign trail. We take life very seriously in a certain way. At the same time, we never go into something like this with a pre-recorded message with notes. I mean, we are very much a family that talks from the heart, and says the things that we feel. And hey, sometimes it's not that politically correct. And, sometimes it is, but, we talk about sports. We talk about, probably not all that different than any other family. I mean, we joke, we're incredibly competitive, as you can imagine. There's a lot of type A personality in the Trump family, and we have a lot of fun.
I got to ask, I got to jump in some gun stuff here. Who's better shooter, you or Don?
Me.
Nice. I want to take you guys both to a PRS competition and let you guys duke it out.
You'd be surprised how well I can nerd out in that subject. I think you and I can do that offline one of these days. But yeah, no, that's it's actually funny if you look at the shooting sports. One of the things that kept us out of bars, when so many of my friends, as I mentioned before, went down bad paths in lives. I'm sure, you had plenty of them as well, right? Either they're excessive drinking, excessive drugs, we never did that. And, for two reasons. I told you one before, my parents put us to work. The other one for us was literally the outdoors, which was really instilled in us through my grandfather. We were in the woods, we were in a tree, we were hunting, we were shooting. And, if you're waking up at, 4:00 in the morning to go out in the field, you're not exactly, wanting to stay at a bar until 3:00. You're right. You're just, the two don't really go hand in hand.
They don't.
And I think I learned more responsibility from kind of the outdoors and that stuff than maybe any other aspect of my life.
Yeah. So as kids growing up, we've all misbehaved and needed to get disciplined by our parents. Tell me about a time when you got called into talk with your dad and he had to give you crap for something you did. I'm curious what that was like.
Maybe I'll bring my mom into this right now. I told you a little about her before. She came from communist Czechoslovakia, an amazing skier, phenomenal skier, Czech national team, et cetera. But, Ivana, right? You don't mess with her. She was elegant, great athlete, but at the same time, if you messed around, it's, you had her nails in your throat. I mean, you ate the food on your plate. You did not waste food. You opened doors. You said, please. You said, thank you. You were polite. It's just very kind of old school. And you didn't want to be on the receiving end of her if you weren't. Today would probably be modern day child abuse. But honestly, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to us. If we misbehaved, we knew about it and we didn't do it again. And so I would say a lot of the discipline actually came from her. She was tough and hard, but fair. And it was, she's a good woman. She's a really good woman.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would be the quality that you would say your parents, mom or dad, would say is your strongest quality? How would they describe you now?
Yeah.
Do you think? I'm sure you're a hard worker, but I'm sure your siblings are as well. So specifically, what makes, if I had to describe Eric, what would they say?
I'm a guy that I think operates very well in a couple different spheres, right? I'm a very good operator, and that's what I do. When I say operator, meaning operations, I'm very good at running things, very good at running properties. It's what I do every single day, run hotels, golf assets. I understand the discipline of it. I understand the structure of it. And I really enjoy that. And with that, I can be in operation mode, or I can kind of be in public mode. And I don't need to be in both modes all the time. During a campaign cycle, I can step out of kind of my, head to the ground kind of work. I can get up on stage and I can speak and I can deliver a great message and I can be on TV all day long. And then I can turn that off like that. And I can kind of get back in, 100% work mode where I've got my eye on a prize and I can, do whatever I need to do to kind of accomplish whatever the respective goal is. And so I've always been very organized, and I've always been the type of guy who doesn't need to be front and center. In fact, so oftentimes likes to operate in the background. I really enjoy being able to kind of go back and forth, right? Like I don't always need to be on. I can be quiet.
Yeah.
And
introvert?
No, I don't think any of us are. But what I'm saying is I don't always need to be in the middle of that spotlight. I'm also happy to be behind the scenes, albeit when I am in the middle of the spotlight, I can do that very well. And so I like being able to operate in both universes. And I think that's what they would say I'm good at. I'm a very organized person. I'm a very disciplined person. I can operate publicly, but I can also be quiet, maybe introverted in a certain way. At the same time, again, it's probably not a word that's ever been used to describe any of us, right? I mean, we're all pretty type A, and we can be loud when we need to be, but it's a great trait that I've realized. It's nice to be able to turn things on and off when they serve a purpose.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, in the world you live in, and with the media surrounding your whole family, and there's obviously a lot of misconceptions about you guys. And so I know you a little bit, know your brother a little bit, and stuff like that. And so I was always surprised. I remember walking the NRA show with Don and how nice he was, and he remembered my name and that kind of thing. What are some common misconceptions that are just widely believed in the mainstream that just are false, that bother you the most? Obviously there's a ton, every politician, everyone in the political world has that, but what are some ones that you just like that irk you?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think, so oftentimes people, view us as the face of a company, but not actually kind of the doers and, the guiders. Nothing's kind of further from the truth, right? I mean, I'm the first person at work every single day. I'm the last one to leave. Probably bear more responsibility than any person on every aspect of the company. Have to be in 100 places all at one time, always, deal with 2,000 things that come in your direction, have to sort them all out. And, so oftentimes, again, people kind of label you as, frankly, they're probably not wrong, right? So many celebrities out there who, can show up to a cocktail party, smile, take a picture, and then go sit on a boat in the Med for 3 months. That's not us. I mean, we don't vacation very, very rarely. I'm in the office all the time. And, we don't stop. Our cell phones don't stop. We are just hard workers. It's kind of who we are. That's one. Fake news is rampant, and not just in the US, but kind of around the world. You guys have a lot of it in Canada and tremendous amount in Europe. England probably makes us both look nice, civilized in terms of the media, but the amount of things that get said about us every single day is just, it's horrible. And they're never based in fact. There was a story the other day talking about me using a burner phone for the last 4 years. This is my phone. I don't have a burner phone. I'm not really the burner phone type, right? That's pretty straight edge guys. No drugs, work hard, have good kids, say prayers at night and don't use burner phones, but the story will literally pick up traction based on well, somebody told, an unknown source said that, Eric used a burner phone. I'm like, you freaking kidding me? It's like, where are you getting this? I'm tucking my kid in at 8 o'clock at night. What could I possibly, so you have all that stuff every single day. So when you're in that public domain, the amount of nonsense, that gets spread. One of the greatest accomplishments of my life is I raised a lot of money for St. Jude Children's Hospital, probably the best pediatric research hospital in the world. And, when my father got into politics, Hillary was getting attacked every single day because of the amount of kind of, waste and abuse in the Clinton Foundation. And so they started attacking my foundation, right? And I raised, $25 million at a 9% expense ratio, before the age of 30, for dying children, for children with stage 4 cancer. I built the largest ICU and surgery center in the United States dedicated to, terminally ill children. The sickest children on planet Earth are in, an ICU, an intensive care unit that I built for St. Jude. Yet it was very kind of expeditious and, politically, I don't know what you call it, but it was politically convenient for them to attack, those efforts. And so, those are the things that are a shame about society, right? So they'll spread lies. Well, he didn't raise that much money. And I'm pretty sure it's pretty easy to prove I raised that much money. Or his expense ratio was off the charts. Like, I ran the lowest expense ratio of any charity in the country. Yeah. They funneled money to themselves. I'm like, guys, if I have a 9% expense ratio and all that money is going to St. Jude, meaning it's hitting their books, which is all very publicly recorded in the United States, like, how can you, and you just, there's a lot of nonsense. I won't use the word on, nice podcast, but just a lot of BS that gets, spread about people, a lot of misconceptions that get spread about people. And, it's infuriating, but, again, it comes with the territory.
How do you, I'm not sure exactly the ages of all your kids, but how much do they see this stuff? I mean, I'm sure they go to a good private school, but I'm sure their friends might poke them on it. Like, how do you manage that side?
Yeah. Well, 2 and 4, fortunately, they see very
okay, so they're pretty young still. I should have.
there have been instances where you'll have a parent that will, say something, it's kind of, but overwhelmingly, I'm telling you, the love in this country, for kind of what we did and what my father did.
Yeah.
Kyle is tremendous. I can show you a note that somebody gave me, every single time I'm on a plane, somebody will come up to me, hand me a note, hey, thank you for what you've done for this country.
Yeah.
We love you. We appreciate you. Do it again in 2024, sign the silent majority. And I get hugs from people, God bless you. God bless your family. Thank you for fighting for, American values. Thank you for, standing up for Christianity. Thank you for standing up for religion. Thank you for standing up for the Second Amendment, our economy and our military. And, I hear thank you for your service all the time, which traditionally you'd always kind of hear that in the context of somebody who served in the military. Thank you for your service. And I think a lot of people in this country, I think everybody in this country, again, saw how many arrows and bullets we as a family took as outsiders. And by the way, not just from the Democrats, from the Republicans as well.
From both sides, yeah.
And, it's become a different political party now. It's not just a political party of the right or the left. It's kind of a political party that when my father walks into a stadium now, they start chanting. You'll have 30,000 people start chanting USA, USA, USA. I mean, he kind of stands for red, white, and blue, and the American flag, and the Pledge of Allegiance, and American patriotism, and toughness. American toughness and grit, and it's pretty interesting. And I can tell you, there's a lot more love out there in this world and in this country than there is hate. Now, you'd never know that if you watch CNN at night, but I think especially now when you're seeing how bad our current president is doing in this country, I can't tell you just the love and admiration that there's been for our family.
Yeah. Well, hey, those are all the questions I had. I appreciate you doing this. I'm sure you're a busy guy. Sounds like you're in New York for a couple of days, or?
Yeah, in New York for a couple of days, and head back home, and back and forth.
Nice. So you moved to Florida as well?
I do. I spent a lot of time down in Florida, moved my family down there, and I kind of bought back and forth. But Florida is an amazing state, and one that's treated us very, very well, and it's doing a lot of things right. Florida is doing a lot of things right.
Nice. Well, make sure when the borders open again, or guys are coming up now, but there's great sturgeon up here. I know you like your fishing. I actually just went off the New York coast a couple months ago in May. Yeah. It wasn't very good in May, but it's fun to do here as well. So,
well, sturgeon fishing is great. Salmon fishing is great. The everything fishing up there is great, and obviously it's a beautiful country. I spent a lot of time there. I spent a lot of time in the north, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
It's good. I think actually that reminds me. At one point, BC was going to be part of America. I think, in the early 1900s or late 1800s, there was some deal because the railroad wasn't coming quick enough. And I'm always curious what that would have been like if Alaska and Washington State were connected. But I guess we'll never know.
It would have given America some great hunting. But
yes,
now listen, we love that part. I was just up in Norman Wells a couple of years ago, all the way up north in the Arctic, and Yellowknife and some of those places. And it's Canada is a beautiful country. And so we love our friends to the north, and you always have supporters in us.
Yeah. Right on, man. Hey, I appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Kyle.
Cheers. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do share it with friends and family, or comment on the post on social media. Share it, to rate it on the different podcast apps. It helps a lot. I also have my link down below through Patreon, where you can support the channel, and you can watch some of the blooper pieces of the podcast, and also some of the clips before and after we start recording the podcast. So if you want to support me there, that'd be awesome. But otherwise, thanks again, and see you in the next one.